Now, there are just 4 days to go to the local elections in England and Northern Ireland, with almost 9,000 seats up for grabs.
Yeah, the Conservatives currently hold the most of those being contested. But how much will anger over the Brexit delays affect the thinking of voters and boost rival parties? Let's speak to the UKIP leader, Gerard Batten. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning.
Plenty for us to talk about, but first of all, give us your sort of doorstep pitch, Mr. Batten, when you're knocking on the doors and you say, I'd like you to vote UKIP because ... How do you complete that paragraph?
Well, I think there are two elements to this. First of all, in a local election, you're electing local councillors to represent you on local issues, and of course they will vary depending on what part of the country you're in. UKIP local councillors will represent you to the best of their abilities on those local issues, but there's also an opportunity to vote on national issues. And of course the one big national issue that everybody knows about at the moment is the failure of the government and Parliament to deliver our exit from the European Union. Everybody knows where UKIP stands on that, there's no doubt about that. So if you're voting for a UKIP councillor, you're getting your local councillor, plus you are sending a message to Westminster, which is that you want to leave the European Union and you want to do it as quickly as possible.
And yet, Mr. Batten, last year you lost more than 120 councillors. This time you're contesting just 16% of the available seats. So for plenty of viewers watching our conversation, this rings hollow because they simply can't vote for you. What does it say about your party that you can't put up candidates in plenty more places?
What it says about the party is that we've actually increased the number of candidates we had from last year by almost threefold. When I took the party over, it was on the edge of collapse. We had a local election campaign about to start where nothing had been done. We managed to get about 500 and odd candidates in place. And this time round, we've got 1,400 candidates in place. So what that tells you is that the party is reviving. Every one of our candidates, of course, is a volunteer who's using their own time, effort and money to fight this. So I think it's a remarkable achievement to go up from 500 to 1,400. And of course, we'd like to have a lot more, and next time we will.
What does it say about UKIP that in recent months you've lost your former leader Nigel Farage, you've lost shed loads of your MEPs, plenty of whom have left with parting shots at you directly? If they don't believe in UKIP, why on earth should a voter?
Well, I'll tell you why, because as I said to you, I took the party on the edge of collapse. Nigel had already walked away, in actual fact. It had nothing to do with me. He'd washed his hands of it a long time ago. And we have now revived the membership, which went down to a low point of about 17. It's now up to, we passed the 30,000 mark at the weekend. So we put 13,000 new members on during my leadership. Some of the people who've walked away and had parting shots of me have done so because of sour grapes, because they weren't elected to winnable seats in the European parliamentary list, which we published last week.
And
so
you don't think any of that
seriously.
has got anything to do with you? You don't occasionally look in the shaving mirror and think, you know what, maybe some of this criticism about me is justified?
I scrutinise what I'm doing every day because I have to, because that's my job. And if membership was going down and candidates were going down, then I'd be very worried. But I'm not. We've lost some people who, quite frankly, were not a great asset to the party anyway, and we've gained thousands more members. So I'm interested in taking it forward and into new areas rather than looking backwards and worrying about what has happened in the past.
I was at your launch for the elections coming up in London, about 10 days ago, and for about an hour you and your colleagues talked about kind of UKIP red meat, talking about Brexit and our future inside or outside of the European Union and all the rest of it. And then after that you unveiled two candidates who you'll acknowledge, you know, are controversial, one standing in the southwest of England, one in Scotland, one of whom has made jokes, in inverted commas, about rape, another of whom managed to ask his dog to perform a Nazi salute and put that on the internet. Plenty of people within your party at the time have criticised this. Even your deputy, Mike Huckam, has suggested that you need to admit that you're wrong and that he was greatly disturbed by a suggestion that this was just defending free speech. Again, I put it to you, do you not think that this is an error of judgment?
Well, again, Carl Benjamin didn't make jokes about rape. He made a remark about rape in order to show that somebody who wants to restrict free speech on the internet would actually use something which wasn't a threat and present it as a threat. And
but isn't the whole point about free speech? Isn't the whole point about free speech? Yes, it's a sacrosanct thing, but it comes with responsibility.
No, it isn't a sacrosanct thing because it's being eroded all the time. And Carl Benjamin and Mark Meehan are serious people who are political commentators who, prior to being candidates for us, actually earned their living on the internet and on YouTube, and have. Carl Benjamin has 1 million followers, Mark Meehan has several 100,000, and we know, UKIP knows it's never going to get a fair crack of the whip from the mainstream media, so those people joined our party voluntarily in order to assist us in getting us out to a wider audience. And what I would say to Mike Hookham, and I have said it to him, is that he should take a bit more serious look at what they're doing rather than a knee-jerk reaction to what's in the mainstream media. But we all have different points of view because UKIP is a democracy, so he's entitled to his view.
Let me come back to this central point, because I think it's the thing that you keep skirting around, which is that
it's the thing that you keep raising, even though it keeps getting answered, and we keep talking about it, but you want to keep hammering it because this is your thing,
you haven't heard
it?
what I'm going to ask yet. So you've lost all of these MEPs, including former leaders who've had a parting shot at you. You've had, just in the last few days, your own deputy, one of the few MEPs who you still have, having a pop at you, and yet there isn't a single acknowledgement from you that some of these issues land at your doorstep and perhaps you're responsible for them.
I inherited MEPs, quite frankly, who hadn't fulfilled their obligations to the party that they undertook back in 2013. I've had to work with these people who didn't do what they said they would do for the party. Some of them walked away before I took over. There was problems long before I took over. And these people knew that they weren't going to be reselected by the party because they hadn't done what they said they would do for the party. And in their party, this is all sour grapes, I'm afraid. They could have stuck with the party. If they'd opposed what I was doing, then they could have stayed and said, well, you know, Gerard's making mistakes, but we're going to stick with the party. And one of us, or several of us, will run in the next leadership election, which will come up immediately after the European elections. But they didn't do that because they'd already... When I took over, Chris, back in February of last year, before any of this kind of controversy had started up, at least 4 of those MEPs said to me that the party is finished, it's done for, it's over. And I said, well, in that case, if you feel that way, why don't you resign and give your seat back to UKIP and give it to somebody who actually believes in it? But they didn't. They carried on going to Brussels and stuffing their pockets with the free money that they get every day. So I wasn't very happy with them, but I was stuck with actually working for them. And now, when they're not being reselected for office, I can go forward with a fresh slate of candidates and people who have signed a contract with UKIP, which will oblige them to actually do what they say they're going to do for the party.
Last question, if I may, and just a sentence from you on this. If you fail to hold your seat in the European elections, personally, your own seat, will you resign as UKIP's leader?
I don't think it would be tenable for me to continue as leader if I can't retain my own seat, and I think a leader of a political party has to be elected to political office. Certainly a major political party like UKIP, which gets millions of votes at certain elections. So yes, certainly that would, I think my leadership, whether I go for it or not in the next leadership election, don't forget I took this on for 12 months in order to save the party, which I've done, and to try to take it in a new direction where it's relevant to more people across the social spectrum. But I think and I won't make that decision until after the European elections anyway, but if I don't hold my seat, then I don't think my position would be tenable.
A direct question and a direct answer. Thanks for coming on.
I do try, Chris.
Many thanks, Gerard Batten, leader of UKIP.